It is well that war is so terrible, or we should grow too fond of it. It was a war where brother fought brother, where the young country of the United States of America fought its greatest enemy, itself. Rifling is where you put grooves in the barrel and grooves on the bullet, so the rifled bullet would spin and cause it to go farther than a regular lead ball would. The Civil War was 4 years of bloody fighting. The guns had improved since the American Revolution, but they were still using outdated tactics. Troops were lined up shoulder to shoulder and marched directly into enemy gunfire. In the Civil War, a lot of the time they would use Napoleonic tactics, where they would line the troops up shoulder to shoulder and march at the enemy gunfire. Invented rifling, you see, and rifling made them shoot farther, but when they had muskets they could only shoot a different way, and they had to, in order to get in range of shot, they had to march into that range. But now that they could shoot in a farther range of shot, they kept marching into that same range, so they're getting shot at. With interchangeable parts, you could, if a part of your gun broke, then you could trade it out with a different gun of that part. A different part of that gun, which is the same part, and it would make it so that you wouldn't have to get, it wouldn't take so long to build the guns. It would be a lot easier to build the guns, and that's how they built so many guns. The mini ball was a bullet of a conical shape, whereas most of the guns up to that time used just a regular lead ball, which was just a ball. But this conical shape, it improved the deadliness of the bullet. The mini ball was covered in a salt layer, right? So when it entered the body, it would expand. And if a slow-moving projectile, it would come and it would enter your body, and it would travel up the bone, and it would shatter the bone. And it would shatter the bone. Jamming a rifle bullet down a muzzle was not easy. The Minet ball, however, would expand when shot out, so it was easy to load and produce the desired effect when shot, because of a salt layer that covered it, that caused it to expand while firing. Many wounded soldiers would most likely die of bleeding rather than just being dead when they were first shot. Walt Whitman said at Falmouth, Virginia in 1862, "Outdoors, at the foot of a tree, within 10 yards of the front house, I noticed a heap of amputated feet, legs, arms, hands, etc. A full load for one horse cart. Several dead bodies lie near, each covered with its brown woolen blanket." The medical science of the Civil War is really quite a tragedy. If someone was hit in the chest or the head, they were usually just laid aside completely, because the doctors knew that there was no way they could save them. If they were hit in a ligament, an arm, or a leg, the immediate reaction was to just cut that arm or leg off. Reloading a gun at the time was no easy task. First, you would take a paper cartridge from your munitions bag. Then you would tear off the top of it with your teeth and squeeze the powder and ball into the muzzle. You would then ram it down to the bottom with your rammer. At that point, you would take your cone and put it on the specified part of the gun, at which point you were ready to fire. All this allowed you to fire about 3 shots in a minute, and if any of it was done wrong, the gun wouldn't fire.
Well, you see here, buddy, sometimes they would take 2 bullet thingies instead of 1, because, like, they're shooting in the war and stuff, so they would take 2 and put it in here instead of putting 1, and it would clog the gun, and then they die.
So the self-contained cartridge made it so that you could you could fire repeatedly without having to reload, because with a non-self-contained cartridge, you'd have to put in the powder separate from the bullet. But with the self-contained cartridge, you could put the powder inside the bullet because of this special new technology that was the self-contained cartridge.
A Henry rifle. See this lever thingy right here? It's used to shoot stuff faster. It was used in the Battle of Little Longhorn. Is that what it's called? What's it called?
Little Bighorn.
Little Bighorn. And it's the basis idea of the Winchester rifle, the American West.
The reason that the Union didn't get more Spencers than it did at the beginning was because the man at the Army office, he thought that it would be wasteful to shoot so many bullets so quickly, that people wouldn't take as much care in their shots, and that they would use up all the bullets quickly, and then they would have to get lots and lots of more bullets. And that would...
Well, this gun is a LeMat. It's created by John Alexander LeMat of New Orleans. And basically, it had this...
Why do you keep shooting it?
It had this thingy right here, which is basically like another thingy the bullet comes out of. And so it made it faster, and what? It fired a really big shot. It made it like a shotgun, basically.
I can't imagine what firing a 60 caliber shotgun one-handed would feel like, but I'm sure it'd have a lot of recoil. Samuel Colt is often credited with being the father of the revolver. He was a businessman at heart.
Colt Army Model 1860 is a .44 caliber weapon that shoots really fast. It was made by the Colt Company, and it was used by the naval forces, the artillery troops, the army, you know, Colt stuff.
The Colt was a very practical gun. It could fire bullets. The Colt, however, was a more standard revolver than the LeMat. Around 20,000 Colts were made. However, Samuel Colt ruined his reputation a little by selling the Colts for $25, while they only cost him $12 to make. At the same time, however, another man named Eli Remington was also in the gun-making business. He went to the War Office and said, "I can make any gun model for $12. I can even make Colt's gun."
Well, because if you were walking in a line, like if the army was walking in a line like this, and the cannon was on one side of the line, like here, and then the line was right there, then when you shoot it, you could basically take out all of the people in that line.
You see, the soldiers all knew that they would have to go home if they survived the war, and they couldn't go home being a coward. So if the soldier in charge of them told them to march up this hill in this really dumb line, then we couldn't be a coward, could they? So they had to march up the hill in order to look not like a coward, because they all knew each other. They didn't want to look like a coward. Union applied for John Erickson to build his own ironclad, and John Erickson spent 100 days building the Monitor, which was unique in that the deck only came 14 inches above the water, and it had a large turret that could swivel. It was often called a cheese box on a raft. but the turret had 2 guns in it, and it would swivel like this. Conditions inside the monitor were very, very hot and very, very loud. In fact, many of the veterans who served on ironclads, who filed for pensions later, filed that they had complete 100% deafness because of all the cannons that were hitting the thing, and the metal was ringing, and it was echoing, and it was bouncing back and forth, and you can imagine just how loud that would be. I swear. The Civil War was the first modern war, and it foreshadowed the horrors to come in the First and Second World Wars. However, the Civil War, and any war, showed that technological innovation comes at a horrible cost of flesh and blood.
Called backlash.
It's called recoil, actually. That reminds me of something. Neither of us had any recoil when we were firing that gun.
It doesn't matter. It's fake. It has an orange tip, Daniel. I'm not gonna think it's real.
Alright.
If you want to